Welcome to LOA Today. Walt, Alyx King, and Carlos Balasquita here on this Tuesday, November the 6th, 2018. It's Election Day here in the United States, 4 p.m. New York time, 1 p.m. Los Angeles time, and 9 p.m. London time to cover the main time zones. And we hope you're having a good election day in the U.S. or a non-election day in other countries and having a good positive attitude with all that you're doing, because that's really the most important thing, no matter what you're doing every single day. You want to be in that good feeling place, because that's where all the good things happen. So, Alyx, Carlos, hey guys, how you doing? What's happening, Alyx? You had a good weekend?
I did have a good weekend. I went to my brother from another mother's baby shower.
Very nice.
Gave out some good gifts, so I enjoyed myself.
I remember you were talking about how it was good for you to get out. Did you feel like it was good to get out after you got out?
Yes and no. I mean, I had my service dog, but I was still really anxious while I was there.
Yeah. Well, you got out. Congratulations. Give yourself a pat on the back for that one, because that's a good one.
Thanks.
Yeah, you deserve that. And Carlos, how you doing? We haven't talked in a few days, but how was your weekend? You have a good one?
Yeah. I'm doing good. Yeah. Just really been eyes open on this election stuff. So.
Oh yeah.
Once today's over, I'm gonna have to kind of shift focus here.
Alyx and I were talking about it before the show, and I was telling her I have a degree in political science, so I have a tendency to want to go dive into the stats and find out what's going on below the surface. And
Right.
I am absolutely convinced that the TV stations, the networks, the magazines, the newspapers have missed the main issue, and they're probably going to notice it tonight. But not the main issue, but the main thing, the main trend that's going on is that there is a big shift going on, and we're seeing this. We saw it in the early voting. I was looking at the early voting stats. That's how I could detect it. There's a big shift going on. More older voters are staying home than normal. More younger voters are going to the polls. And that could have really, really big impact on this year's election. So, I mean,
I think it's the beginning of that shift. Yeah.
yeah, I'm one of the few people who's still predicting a big blue wave, and I've been seeing that for like the last 6 months. I don't know where the rest of the media have been. I've been watching their articles and watching their stuff and so forth, and it's like they and I seem to be looking at different statistics. So I don't quite understand where they're all coming from. Maybe I'm wrong. I could be entirely all wet. That's the nature of that kind of prognostication.
It seems too that people have never voted before are definitely
in big numbers
are going and I think a lot more are younger than there are older, new voters. And so
I agree.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. It'll be very interesting to see. I think, like I said, it's the beginning of a turn, because I feel that we're starting to figure out, hey, we are the majority as far as millennials are concerned, and the future is ours to kind of mold. So I think, and also a big shift in what our representatives are going to look like too. I think that for the first time we might have 100 women in Congress, which is a huge milestone.
Right.
And just in general, more ethnicities, even people that veterans. There's a lot of veterans that are also kind of on both sides, which I think is good, because then you start to get people that would talk to each other, right?
We need a little more of that. Yeah.
So, that's the sentiment, or that's the thought. So we'll see. It's going to be very interesting, I'm sure.
I think it will be too.
The results.
I am hopeful for the first time in a few years. I'm hopeful that, and this is of course a main theme that we harp upon here in LOA Today. I'm hopeful that more and more people are going to be focusing on what they want than what they don't want, because there's so much in the last couple of years, especially. There's been so much finger pointing and anger and frustration, and the other side's lying, and the other side's doing this, and the other side's doing that. Not so much in terms of what people want, not so much focusing on what it is that they really want. It's always focusing on what they don't want. And we law of attraction folks know that doesn't produce the results you hope that it's going to produce. So I'm hopeful that there's a shift going on. We'll have to see, but that's what I'm hopeful for.
Yeah. Decisions made in fear in general are not, and that goes to law of attraction as well, just not ever a good decision. You
Absolutely.
Definitely want to do something for the affirmative, because of something, and not because you're afraid of an outcome or,
Right.
yeah, that'll never steer you in the right direction. But
Exactly.
yeah.
So this is going to be an interesting night to. I really don't usually watch returns. That's not normally my thing to do, but I think I may watch a little bit this evening. Not like watching through on a streaming basis. I'll just check in like once an hour and see what's going on, that kind of thing, which I normally
Right.
wouldn't do in a midterm. But yeah, but
I'm more interested in the questions that we had to vote on for each state.
what'd you have in
Like the bills
Massachusetts?
and the measures.
Massachusetts, we had question 1 was more nursing staff. Question 2 was
What does that mean? More nursing
something.
staff? That sounds like a strange question for a political environment.
Well, basically, they're saying that in like emergency rooms and stuff like that, that there's the patient to.
Oops. Did we miss and lose Alex?
Okay, I'm back.
Oh, there you are.
No,
Oh,
my
okay.
Wi-Fi went down for a second. The patient to nursing staff ratio is way off. So that was what question 1 was about, and we're voting yes or no, or whether we want more nurses in emergency rooms and doctors' offices and things of that nature.
So is this like a state mandate? In other words, the state's going to say you have to
Yeah.
have a certain number of nurses for certain situations. Is that what it is?
Yes,
I see.
exactly.
Okay. I get it.
Yeah, I think those are interesting too. I think that just the questions to your point, or those bills and measures, props. I think they're called for certain things. That's something I've had an issue with for a long time. And if you have a background in political science, Walt, you probably know this as well as anybody. But a lot of those things, I feel super uncomfortable voting, even the way that I feel is the right way, because there's so many things that are attached to those bills.
Yeah.
So like you'll have a nurse's bill that'll have some verbiage in there about senators' contribution limits, and you're like, what is this? Why is this in here? This has nothing to do with this. And the reason why is because, well, the majority of the bill is this, but in order to kind of get this on the measure, we had to put this other thing on there too that this this side wanted, and that just convolutes a lot of stuff.
Yep.
And then you start again. You vote for something that really, in theory or in thought, is great, but you're opening so many back doors. And that's kind of some of the things that I look at, and that's why I'm interested in politics. Really, is just more about how to reform these things, and that's not in either party, just in general. There's certain things that happen, bills that come to the floor in the Senate that have nobody's read, and
That's part of the course.
and they have to vote them right there. And it's like these bills are thousands of pages long, and as an American citizen, it's like, if you want me to follow these laws and ordinances and things, like, why are you making these things so difficult? Like, right? Like, a lame person should be able to read these things and decipher, what they are and what's going
Right.
on. And if not, like, you shouldn't have to have a law degree in order to follow the rules of, the government or where you live. And that's a bigger, hot button issue. But
What I can tell you is welcome to the world of
much.
politics, because what you're
Right,
describing is
right.
called pork barreling. Pork barreling is where you
Right.
just keep adding stuff onto the bill that has nothing to do with the original bill, but because somebody, you're going to get their vote if you add this on, so you add it on. And now they're also doing
Right.
that with propositions. And like you say, I mean, the average person looks at the proposition, all they see is a single sentence, maybe two, up on their board that they're looking at, or whatever it is, whatever voting instrument they're using, and they have
Right.
no idea what any of the history is of the thing, and they're supposed to make an intelligent decision on it.
Yeah. And then the commercials are both sides, right? It's like,
course.
they
Right.
both can but the thing is, they both could be telling the truth. Here we have one for Prop 8 is for dialysis, something about the way that they're changing treating dialysis patients. And so there's one commercial that says, no, this is the worst thing that could ever happen. We're going to die if this happens. And then the other, they're saying, oh, well, this is bad for doctors and whatever. But both of those things could be true because of all of the different kinds of things that are in this bill. So it's like,
Right.
at the end of the day, you really don't know. And I think that's really where I am looking forward to in the next 10 years or so, is see if we can get some more transparency as far as what's going on. And
There's
not just, what we hear in the media, because a lot of that too is how do we know? We used to argue about facts. So if you're a Republican, I'm a Democrat, or vice versa, we can agree on the fact of the matter, and we have different opinions on how we're going to go about tackling this. But in this political climate, we can't agree on the facts anymore. And that's, to me, is a huge issue. It's like, well, if we're not comparing apples to apples, then what are we even talking about? Of course, there's a divisive kind of political climate because, again, what are we even talking about?
That's always fun. Yeah, that's true. There's a couple thoughts that go to my mind. One is there's a long-term, an old phrase about political legislation and sausages. You don't want to see how either one is made because it's really disgusting.
That's funny.
And it's true. I mean, you just don't want. I mean, it's just revolting what actually happens behind the scenes, and that's been going on for generations. There's nothing new in that. What has become the new thing is, particularly over the last 10 to 20 years or so, political operatives have really begun to understand that politics, like any other form of communication, whether it be advertising communication or entertainment type communication or just even interpersonal communication, all communication is governed primarily by emotions rather than by facts. We like to think in terms of facts. We like to believe that we're factual, but in fact we're all emotional. And that's a hard concept. And what goes along with that concept is once you understand as a political operative that that's what's winning the day, then you lose an interest in trying to maintain a factual dialogue. That's why we're now in a place where one side or the other is, just making stuff up and just throwing it out there just to energize their base and so forth because they know it has an emotional appeal. And I don't really see a nice, easy way back from that one. I'm not quite sure how that's going to resolve itself. I'm not saying it can't resolve itself. I'm just saying I just don't see an easy way back. So I don't know. Maybe what happens today is going to make a positive impact on that. I hope it does, but I'm just not crossing my fingers on it. I'm not saying, I think it's going to happen. But anyway.
Right. I mean, I think that most people, though, are in the middle. Like you talk about, I think that on TV, it seems like it's very left and right, but I think most people fall, right in that bell curve, right? And so it's like, there's a lot of stuff that people do agree on, but when you push more and more to the far right or the far left, you start to it starts kind of unravel because, you start to argue about stuff that will never, come to terms about. There's certain things there's like it's black and white. So it's like, well, why are we even talking about those things? There's plenty of things that are here in the middle that we can kind of get through. But again, that's everybody acting rationally. So
but that's my point, though. You're asking for something that's not likely to happen because everybody's figured out, you get more results by pushing the emotions button. Well, so how do you get back to rationality? Right. And I'm not really sure how you do that. Not where there's so much political power at stake. That's the thing. There's a lot of political power at stake. But yeah. So actually, one of the things that being a political scientist did for me, that plus for many years, I don't really consider myself to be politically aligned with anything anymore. I used to be libertarian in my nature, but I've since even abandoned that. I've gotten to the point where I really don't think that politics is ever going to solve anything. We like to think that it will. We hope that it will. We pray that it will. We vote like we hope that it will. But I don't know. I've been alive for 61 years now, and after 61 years, I still can't tell you that I've seen any significant change that has come out of politics. I've seen a lot of changes. A lot of changes have happened. But if I really honestly look at it, can I say that politics caused them? I'm not so sure I can say that. There are always these other factors, So
a lot of times politics are reactionary, it seems like.
Yeah,
right?
I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Like you think about, I was watching a documentary the other day about the legalization of gay marriage here in the U.S., right? And it was like they went to the Supreme Court, and that went to people Oh, maybe that's a bad example. That actually is an example of the court getting it right first. The people getting it wrong.
Well, it depends where you're
so,
thinking. I mean, because when Doma
right.
was around, they were definitely not getting it right on that one. It took them a while to
But
overturn that.
I think it does depend, but I also think that that's actually a good example of that's, I think, where politics for minorities especially is so important, is protecting our liberties, right? And I feel like because it's constantly always trying to be taken away, and you think about, even recently or I don't know if even they did this, but they were talking about taking away the protection for voters, the Voter Protection Act, and the argument was, well, there's no voter suppression anymore.
Oh yeah, that's going to be a big issue in 2
yeah,
years. That's going to be really big in 2
yeah,
years.
because there's a law. Of course, there's not voter suppression. As soon as you take the law out, it's people are going to take the liberties where they can, and I think that I really look at it, instead of making huge changes, it's protections that we really should seek and look for, because you think about even like things like slavery, and then Jim Crow. That's just oppression that looks different, and it just continues and continues. And now it's the broken black and brown family, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's like the newest thing, and you think about it's because of the drug war, and now they're talking about making the legalization of marijuana a federal thing, and they're also talking about releasing a lot of people. So those are the things that really you think as a minority, especially, that you got to go out and you got to vote for, and you got to really use politics when you can, when it's available to you. You got to use it.
Yes.
As far as like, if you're talking about just an average middle class America, as far as politics is concerned, no, we haven't really received anything, in the last however many years. It's been, kind of a ping pong effect of giving, subsidies and programs for those that are less fortunate, and also then giving tax cuts. So people in the middle, a lot of people in the middle have been stuck without really much to show for a while.
You're making a strong argument for centrism, so congratulations on that. I really do think, though, that the whole thing really points to how important it is to focus on what you want. Because you can tell, even in our conversation here, we're talking about sometimes stuff that we don't like. And that's where most political conversations go. They end up that's how you end up with that extreme left, extreme right thing that you were talking about. They end up focusing on a whole bunch of stuff that one side or the other just doesn't like. And they get all worked up about it. They get angry about it. I mean, there's a lot of anger in this election on both sides. You can see it in the media. You can see it in social media. It's all over the place. And that anger is what's driving a lot of it. Well, that means that there's a whole lot of people who are focusing on what they don't want.
Yeah,
true.
That's true.
So at some point you got to shift. You got to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to keep focusing on that, because all it does is give me more stuff I don't want. I gotta shift it up. I gotta change it.
Yeah. You also have to ask for stuff for your vote. I think Killer Mike, who's a rapper and activist out of Georgia, he really makes a great point. He says that, again, for black and brown people, we've been voting Democrat for as long as we can remember. But we don't, that's an expected outcome, and we never ask for anything for our vote. We just show up. We're like, we're just going to show up, and it's like, the Republicans haven't done anything for us. Well, you've been voting Democrat for 50 years, and really, what have you gotten from them, also? So it's kind of that. It's like, not that we're not going to vote or that we're not going to take this right, but it's like, hey, let's agree as a group of things that, like you said, things we want, and then, use our vote to enact those things. I think a lot of votes are taken for granted, and that's being, I think, shown a lot too now, especially for, like you said, people being energized with emotions, and how are women going to vote, how are minorities going to vote, how are these people, young people versus old people. I think that's what you're looking. It's like, hey, you're seeing is more people saying, hey, this is what I want, and this is what I expect for those votes. And I think that you're seeing in the change of garb in the seats more than anything, and those new people that have never been politicians before. There's a guy out of Georgia. I hope you're right. I hope that it actually is focusing on people
focusing on what they want. I guess I'm a little jaded. I've seen so much of the other direction, so I'll believe it when I see it. But
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think in
Yeah.
terms of when I'm thinking about focusing on what I want rather than what I don't want, I'm actually thinking outside of political circles. I think that,
Okay.
like for instance, you were talking about ethnic issues, right? So for
Right.
me, if I want to think about it from now, my ethnicity is not really usually not an issue. White male is not usually a problem, right?
Right.
But for somebody who has an ethnic background, for me, I wouldn't be trying to organize my ethnicity in a certain direction because first of all, everybody's a little bit different anyway. So it's not like it's not like there's one Latino. And that's just not the way it is. There's not one
Right.
Yeah.
black person. It's just there are individuals. They're all individuals. So I'd be focusing on what's important to me, whether it be important to me as a Latino or as a black person or whatever, or just me as a person. And then I would be
Hmm.
putting out there, here's the kind of thing I'm interested in. I want to find other people who have the same kind of interest. And basically taking advantage of the law of attraction to bring those people together so that, basically you're expanding your social circle. And your
Right.
social circle is becoming perhaps something of an activist circle, depending on what you're trying to do. And then using that, the law of attraction dynamic to move outside of political circles and say, you know what, I'm not going to trust that government's going to bring me what I want. So I'm going to focus on what I want and let the law of attraction bring it to me. And I'm going to encourage other people I know who are in the same mindset as I am to focus the same way. Because if you do that, you don't have to worry about how it's going to happen anymore, right? That's the whole point of
Right.
law of attraction. You don't have to worry about how it happens. So you don't have to worry whether or not it's the government that's going to do it. I mean, you don't care how the universe delivers the result, right? You just want
Yeah.
the
Right.
result.
Hmm.
It doesn't matter how it got there.
Yeah. No, that's true.
So I mean, that's where my hope is. My hope is, and that's one of the reasons we do the show, is that more and more people will understand. When you focus on what you want, you don't have to worry about whether it happens through government or whether it happens through religion or whether it happens through the entertainment industry or the news, reporting the news differently or whatever. You're counting on the basic laws of the universe to deliver what it is that you
Right.
want, and that's always going to be a much better play, I think.
I agree.
Alyx, I can always count on you for a nice, concise answer. I agree. Oh, that's funny. Well, anyway, we've been spending more than enough time on the political picture.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's get to our topic because we were talking last week about careers and about how important it is to focus on what you want, where career is concerned, and some of the challenges, particularly that young people have with trying to identify careers. And Carlos, you told a really great story about how your life has progressed so far, and the curves that have come along the way, and how you went with the curves and you didn't really fight things, and you ended up with results that were astonishing to you. And we heard some from Alyx too. I guess the question is, where do we want to go next with that conversation? Because it's a big issue. I mean, a lot of people are still struggling with career type issues. Where do you want to take it today?
Now, I actually thought of something when you were speaking just now, and it has to do with university, and a lot of people, or not, maybe not even university, but trade schools, anything that really, cosmetology, anything that really you have to go and train for, or you go to school for a career. And I think that something that I just wish I would have known, like, and you think about these things in reflection, talking to your younger self, things that you would, the knowledge you want, and once I have it, I love to share it, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
feel like one big thing was that I found a lot of people, or I saw a lot of people doing, was they were majoring in things that uh, they they love, but they weren't getting any outcome out of it. And I think that you have to
Hmm.
kind of be skeptical of the university system and those kind of things. Just because they offer something as a major doesn't mean that you need to spend 40,000 a year in order to do that thing that you love. Like if you're spending 50,000 a year to get a dance degree, and because you love dance, but you really don't want to be a professional dancer, or I mean, there's a lot of things that are like that. So I think that it's more important. I've kind of found, and I've kind of said this and as advice before, it's like really find what you love, but then school should be about arming yourself with tools in order to achieve that. So it may not be that you need to go to school for dance. Like maybe you love dance and you want to be in that industry, right? And so you may want to, what is it that you want to do, for dance? Maybe you want to be a choreographer. Well, maybe you take choreography. There's just different ways of going about it. And I think that we're kind of brainwashed into thinking like, you go to high school and then you go to college and get this specific major and then this is going to be your outcome, and it's very linear, and that's not how life works. And right. I feel like there's a lot of it hits you in the face once you're like, hey, I have $100,000 in debt and my degree is worthless. You know what I mean? Like, and again, there's nothing wrong with loving art, there's nothing wrong with loving dance, but do you have to go to, especially if you're not going to a great dance school, like if you're going to Cal State San Bernardino for dance, like could you love dance and not have to spend that for $20,000 a year? You know what kind of one-on-one dance training you could have? You see what I'm saying? Like, so don't just look at something and say, I don't know what I want to do, so I'm going to start spending this money that I don't have already. You know what I mean? Like,
I agree with that.
Take your time, go to the junior college, find out what you like, find out what, try jobs, try different industries that you might like. Don't be in a rush. Some people know right away. Like my sister knew she wanted to be a doctor and she didn't pick her head up until she was one, right? And that's, all favor to those people. But again, a lot of people, especially in the fringe or the not normal or the not very common professions, I think that there's more to be said with networking and getting experience and doing those things rather than necessarily getting the degree. Again, not saying that won't serve you. If you go to Juilliard, obviously you're gonna benefit from that. But that's something that I've seen and I wanted to bring it up first because that's the beginning of a journey a lot of times into this career thing, and you don't want to set yourself up for failure, out of the go.
I'd want to also point out.
I feel like
no, go ahead, Alyx. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you
first. I was going to say, I feel like
you've only done short statements so far. We got to let you talk a little bit.
I know, right? A lot of the people I know that went to school and spent all that money don't even use their degrees that they went to school for. Like they're totally doing something completely different, as opposed to the kids that went to trade school and studied for a specific career, that they're still to this day doing that job. So I totally feel what Carlos is saying.
Mm-hmm. I would want to point out that if you already have one of those degrees and you feel like, well, I didn't really know what I was going for and I don't know why I got it, I would recommend not feeling bad about that. Because even with what you got, I mean, I have a degree in political science. Do you have any idea why I got a degree in political science? I don't have an idea why I got a degree in political science.
Right, that's my point.
I mean, exactly. when I first went after it, I thought I was going to be a lawyer. I took one pre-law course. I said, well, nope, this ain't for me. And I was done with that track. And now all of a sudden, I'm on this degree track for something that I didn't even know what I was going to do with it. And to this day, I don't know what I'm going to do with it from a career point of view. I never have done anything with it. But just because I'm not doing anything with it directly, other than trying to figure out what's happening with the next election, doesn't mean that it wasn't worthwhile for me, because I did learn a lot from it. I mean, I learned a lot about myself. Right. I learned a lot about how the world works just by taking that class, taking that series of classes, and getting that degree. So anything that you do, any kind of study that you do is worthwhile. I do agree with you that it's important to spend as much time as we can focusing on trying things, try this, try that, try that. I like your idea, Carlos, of the junior college approach. Just try something out, see if you like it before you commit to anything, before you start saying, I'm going to spend $20,000 on it. I mean, when I went to school, believe it or not, my entire debt when I left school was under $10,000. And believe it or not, that was a lot. Because the previous generation, they had spent like $500 a year on college. So, I mean, that shows just what kind of a geometric scale there's been in terms of college costs over the years.
And
But
and the information isn't any more valuable now than I think trigonometry still.
well, I think there's probably more of it.
$1,000 worth of trigonometry now. Yo, I got shortchanged. I need that trigonometry that you guys, I only got the $500 package. No, but that's my point is to be skeptical, right? You should be skeptical of everything, but just think about why you're doing things. I'm very against doing things because others are doing them. As soon as I feel like a lot of people are doing that, I'm like, whoa, why? What's going on here? Shows, like I haven't watched Game of Thrones yet, because
Same.
I'm like, well, everybody likes that. It gives me a natural uneasiness, right? And when I say that,
because you don't want to get involved in that mob mentality.
Right. Just because it's like, oh, why are you going to college? Well, everybody's going to college. I'm supposed to, it's like, again, not that college is bad.
That's why I didn't do it.
don't waste time and money, and just look at the cost benefit, right? It's like, hey, is this college? Oh yeah, I got a scholarship. Oh, great. Cool. Of course, I can now you do whatever, it doesn't matter if you wasted the money really, because again, if you want to spend it on whatever, because it didn't cost you anything, right? But if it costs you 40,
but of course it does cost you your time and your effort. Because if you're going for a 4-year degree, you're giving up 4 years of your life for it. So I think it still makes sense to pursue what you love, or at least to try to find what you love before you pursue it. I mean, it would be hard to get rid of a free 4-year scholarship. I mean, to walk away from that, I agree, that would be tough to do. But it might be smart to take a little time just to see what is it I want to do before I even consider taking it on.
That's true. Yeah. But then, also don't let shame or embarrassment kind of determine your path either, because I think a big part of me and finding what I love now is finding a lot of stuff that I was okay but didn't really love, So it's like, from the time I was 16 to the time I had graduated college, I probably had 12 jobs, right?
Wow.
Which is less than 10 years, so you can kind of do the math on that. But I tried everything. So I spun signs in front of, apartment complexes. I worked at McDonald's. I worked at a college bookstore. I was a manager of a hair salon. I worked at a PR firm. I worked, as a performer at Disneyland. And the reason I did all these things is because I love saying yes to opportunities, especially new things. It's like, oh, you want to be a performer at Disneyland? Well, I've never performed anything before. But yes, absolutely, I want to do that. And sometimes, like I said, you figure out that you don't like it, but don't let fear or embarrassment. Oh, well, what are people going to think if I try to do that? You know what I mean? Like, I feel like
you can't live like that.
Yeah, a lot of times we let kind of these pressures kind of guide us.
Oh God, yes.
But the opportunities, again, speaking of the law of attraction, they come to you for a reason, right? So just be open, be as open as possible. I know sometimes it's harder for us than other times, but
that's a great attitude.
The more stuff you try, especially like I love trying things for the first time. There's just something about that excitement of not knowing, and that's kind of my advice: is try as much stuff as you possibly can.
I gotta ask you about the sign spinning, because I've seen everybody's seen the people spinning the signs on the corners and so forth. Is there like a competition that goes on? Because it seems like you go from one corner to the next and you got different guys spinning signs there. And it's like, they're almost like in an acrobatic corps. They're trying to do it better than the other guy. Is that like true? Is there like a competitive edge to that?
That's just people being prideful in their work. So whenever you see somebody like that, give them a honk. And, these guys make $10 an hour, minimum wage.
Right.
So there's two kind of philosophies in sign spinning. So there's that one, right? It says, well, I'm going to be the Kobe Bryant of the sign spinning community, right? And they're going all out, they're doing tricks, right? They probably have like a couple of wristbands on, the sweat. they're stretching before, like this is their Super Bowl, right? And then I was part of the other faction where I'm a big believer in the American dream. And when I say that, I mean do the least amount of work for the most amount of money. And so when I was sign spinning, I was doing a lot of just pointing, right? This is where it is. I'm not trying to confuse anybody.
You were promoting, yeah.
Right. I was being as efficient in my movements as possible, you know. Because
I'm
I
just
did
having
realize,
the visuals over here.
right, I did realize, like, hey, if I spin this sign 20 times, I'll make $10. But if I spin the sign 50 times, I'll also only have $10. So that's when I was like, you know, I think that for me, this is as much effort as I'm going to put into this.
You remind me of the guy I saw one time doing some sign spinning, and he was very low key about it. He had his sign. He wasn't even waving it around very much. He was waving it a little bit, and he was going.
Right.
very, very subtle motions. Over there, over there.
Yeah. Like, dude, you have a 6-foot sign hanging off your neck. Like, use the sign. Yeah.
That was funny. I wonder how well those things work too. That was the other thing I always wondered. Do people actually pay attention to them? Does that actually? Do you ever see people, you know, going over to the parking lot where your store is because you were spinning the sign for that store?
Well, the thing is, you're not. It was for real estate, so it was like for opening developments and those kind of things. So I didn't see anybody that actually would use it because I'd be on some dirt road where there's no houses yet, and there's like 4 model homes that are up.
Right.
So that's why it was, you know, like I said, it was. I'm not going to spin signs for no one. So I can see about half a mile up the road. So I was like, oh, here's somebody comes, and then, you know, I'll put in a lot of effort for that car, you know. Oh, but it's like, well, they're gone now. So, you know, wait here for the next car.
I love it. I had never thought I was going to get insight into sign spinning. That's great.
Yeah, no, it's funny. A lot of people actually give the opposite advice. They're like, "Hey, don't do a lot of jobs because then that's going to look like you're not stable. Like you constantly want to leave."
That's the old style. That's the old school mentality. Yeah.
But I'm like, yeah, I do want to leave. What do you mean? I've never taken the job. The job that I've gotten has always been better than the last one, right? And as long as that's the case, then, you know, I'm just going to stay here for whose benefit, because they'll replace me faster. You know, if I were to keel over tomorrow, they'll put up you know, job wanted sign tomorrow. So it's like, you know, yeah, have loyalty, but at the same time, it's like look for your own growth, and then all through all those experiences. You know, the PR firm was completely different from the hair salon, but I learned things at the hair salon that are invaluable, and I take them to this day. It's like, well, what do you mean? Well, I worked in a salon with 20 women, and it's like, well, yeah, that's a lot of personalities, and people are upset, and then scheduling and customers and all this stuff. It's like, well, now I took that, and when I'm project managing, it's like I have just as much pressure, but I don't know how to handle it. And so that's my point about just being open to these opportunities, because don't get set on your mind like, oh, well, so for me, right now, I want to be a comedian and actor. Okay, well, if I set that in my mind, you know, 15 years ago as my outcome, that's great, right? I have a true north. But then as opportunities come, like I said, they're there for a reason. So for me to be like, no, that's not exactly what I'm looking for, you know, that's maybe a little bit too hyper focused, because again, you pick up these tools and you're building a tool belt so that when you get what you're asking for, that you're ready for it, you know, and you can sustain it, you can hold on to it. You know, I think that's the biggest thing. And so, yeah, just be cognizant, even if you're taking opportunities in the meantime, you're still going to school. There's a lot of people doing jobs while you're going to school. Don't take the jobs for granted. That definitely try to learn as much as you can, you know, how to deal with people, how to deal with bosses. You know, it's like I was told, or I experienced this. I was like, man, after having so many jobs, I'm like, I would say like 8 out of 10 of my bosses were not good, not good managers, not good bosses. So I'm like, that's the majority. So it's like, well, if that's the case, then it's kind of good that I went through that, right? So now I'm you know, able to deal with these different difficult situations and so on. So yeah, I mean, hitting the same or beating the dead horse, I guess as you say, but.
Well, no, I love the point that you made too about not worrying about whether or not your resume is showing a lot of job skipping, because that's actually a relic from my father's generation. My father worked for the General Electric Corporation for 44 straight years. That was his entire work life. at one company.
Right.
And that was the mindset during that era. You didn't want to be shifting jobs all the time. You wanted to develop that relationship of loyalty. But that fell apart during my generation, actually. The whole thing about loyalty to the worker fell apart. And so it really doesn't pay to try to stick with just one job on your resume or two jobs on your resume. It actually does pay to move around. That's the way things now work.
Yeah.
Yeah, because now you're experienced in all these different areas, and you know what you can handle in what different situations based on where you've been.
Yep, exactly right. So, okay, well, now we've all agreed that it's good to try things out. So you're trying things out. Now, Carlos, you kind of touched on this a little bit, but you're trying things out. How do you know when you found the right one?
That's a good point. I think that, first of all, this notion of the perfect one as far as relationships or the perfect one as far as the job, like I feel like we have to kind of let that go, because for me it's like happiness is reality minus equals reality minus expectations, right? And so I feel like a lot of times we pigeonhole ourselves into these expectations for work, for love, for, well, this person has to be exactly my Prince Charming, and he has to, check all these boxes, or this job has to. The thing is, like, we're in this new world of choices and the internet, and there's just so many things that we're never going to be happy if we don't look and live in gratitude, be happy where we're at or what we have. And so the right one, I feel like, again, like maybe changing that whole mentality, and it's like, well, how do I find happiness in what I'm doing right now? Because life is linear also. I mean, life is fluid, right? So nothing is forever. Even when you get to, I think if you're working towards whatever it is that you're working towards, let's say, for me, I'm a touring stand-up comedian. Okay, cool. Again, I'm a human. I want to grow, so that's not going to be the end for me. So, I thought maybe 10 years ago, that's the one, the job. But once I get to the one, there's going to be other ones, right? So don't kind of, attach your happiness to an outcome of the perfect job or the perfect, just be happy. And if you're not happy, go find happiness. I think it's we complicate it, but that's the very, I didn't tell this the last time, but during what was going on, I lost me and my girlfriend at the time had broken up. I had lost the job, or I had quit the job that I was at, and really I made a promise to myself that I wouldn't do anything that didn't make me entirely happy, completely happy. And I made that promise to myself. And again, I break that promise to, sometimes even now, but that's a cognizant thing that I started thinking about then. And for me, again, if we talk about life as a feeling process, and the things that you manifest is about feeling, then I think that you taking your own happiness as the main priority is the number one, right? And so once I started doing that, it's like, well, that's what happened with the job. I was like, I made that decision, and I was going to work every day, hating it, dreading it. If I say, well, this doesn't match my new commitment to myself, so I'm going to let it go. And again, not advisable to just kind of leave a job without anything, but it was something that I had really, I had made that commitment, and there wasn't anything that was going to stop me from from keeping it. And so that's what started, the working out more, the eating healthy, all these things that were making me extremely happy were the only things that I would do. And that includes people too in my life that, unfortunately, I just had to fizzle out from talking to, because again, I would only accept positivity and things that are going to make me happy into my life. And so once I made that commitment, the universe started to unfold and unravel, for me. So I think that, again, going back to the feeling process, that's kind of important.
Let me come at it from a different angle, because I think I may have put the wrong question into your head. Let's put it this way. If you find something that you love, that you're really enjoying doing, should you keep doing it? And if so, how long should you keep doing it?
Yeah, no, just do it until it doesn't make you happy anymore. Do it until you start cheating the process, I think. That's what I've talked to a lot of people, or I've heard a lot of things. There was an HBO series with LeBron James, and they're talking to other, top athletes, top comedians, just the kind of the people that are top in their field.
You talking about The Shop?
Yeah, The Shop. It's called The Shop, and it was
Yeah.
great. And that's something that they said. It said, what was it? Who did the Daily Show before? It was Jon Stewart. And they asked, well, what did you get? You were in the height of whatever it is that's what you've always wanted, and you were in the height of it. Why did you leave? Mm-hmm. And he said, I left when I started cheating the process. Like I didn't love, I wasn't putting the care and love into it that I had before. And I think that's the time where it's time to say goodbye, right? You really put the passion and the love into it, because what you put in, you'll get out. And I think that there's a law of diminishing returns. It's a point to where it's like, it's time for me to grow out of this. I'm comfortable. I'm just kind of going through the motions here. I think that's really time to seek, something else. Because again, if you're not putting the passion into it, do you love it that much still? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is all my personal opinion, but
that's fine.
I feel like, that's where I feel like I would draw the line, to move on to something else.
Is that the way you see it, Alyx?
That's exactly the way I see it. I feel like if you do things as long as you're happy in it, and when it's no longer satisfying you, that's when it's time to bow out.
I agree. What about if you're doing something that you love, but the money isn't where you want it to be? What about then?
Find a way to make it work for you, because obviously the way you're doing it is not working. If it's not the amount of money that you want to make. So, for instance, like me doing hair, I love making people feel beautiful, but working at a certain salon was not working for me. I wasn't getting the clients that I needed, so I had to go out on my own.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say patience too, like, because that's the flip side to the coin, right? It's like, well, now you're doing it what you love, but you're not making the money. And and I don't know if I said this in the last one, but I say this a lot, so forgive me if I'm. But
hey, Carlos, I repeat myself every week, so you join the club.
Okay,
is what
cool.
I can say.
But yeah, I mean, I think that when you love to do something, let me back up. So I think that, again, the people that become very successful is the people that stick around. And it's through, like, the first phase of people will drop off because they're doing it for the wrong reasons, right? Oh, I want to do music. Well, why? Because I want to be famous. I want to make a lot of money. Okay. That only lasts that kind of passion only lasts for a couple of years, maybe that. Right? And then you have the people, the next, who really do love it, but then they don't have the passion, or they may not love it enough to go through all of the tribulations that are required. Or again, there's situations that happen in our life that wasn't for them, right? Something drastically changed in their life. They had a child or whatever, and it's like, now I have to be responsible for my family, and this is not realistic for me anymore, right? But the people that get all the way through, and I see this a lot in a lot of different professions: music, comedy, acting, especially the ones that aren't just like go to school and get your degree and then get a job. Right around that 10-year mark, it's like you start to see people emerge, and the money shows up. And again, 10 years is a long time to wait, but if you're doing it because for the money, then you're already in it for the wrong reasons. And so, like, it's kind of this tightrope walk, and how do I stay on this thing without falling off? And sometimes, and it's not going to be a constant 10 years too, you might be like, hey, I'm struggling right now, I got to take a year and I got to do this other thing, or I'm not writing a lot right now because certain things are happening in my life. But again, if you just keep pushing, to me it's an eventuality. I like to look at, like, Danny DeVito. I always talk about, he's an actor, short, pudgy guy, 4'11", bald, overweight, and I'm like, man,
he doesn't fit a single stereotype of any kind of actor that I've ever heard of.
I know, and I read a story about him that basically he just got told no so many times, and but it was just non-deterring, right? And I think that's where the passion meets, what you love, is when it's almost an irrational thing. It's like, this doesn't make any logical sense that anybody would put you in a movie. Oh, well, I don't care about that. This is really what I want to do. You know what I mean? You're going past, and that has to do with the law of attraction too. It's like those people don't see regular obstacles and see them as obstacles. It's like, oh, you know what? That's just happening right now. No big deal. Or whatever it is, just to kind of get their mind wrapped around their eventuality. And so, I have great respect for people I see that have done that and just fought all the way through. And what I've learned from those people also is that it's worth it. It's like, man, I just went through so much. But when you're doing something that you love, then all those 10 years have been worth it. It's like those, even in the struggles, like they've had great times, and they don't take those years for granted. When you do it for the wrong reasons, it's like, man, it took me 10 years and now I finally made it. It's like, they look at those 10 years differently. They're like, oh man, those 10 years sucked. I would never do that again. And, people that, did it for the right reasons, they look back and they're like, wow, look at all these things that I built. And now they're coming into fruition. It's almost like seeing a child or seeing like, something that you created, like be what it is. I think there's something beautiful in that.
I agree
it's like you gotta gather up all the berries because you don't know how sweet your pie is gonna be at the end. So gather every one.
Right.
Yeah, it's true. And in fact, when we do it that way, I mean, it's possible to be on a track where you're being patient about a career choice that when you finally get close to the goal, you find it's really not what you wanted to do in the first place. You thought it was, but it really isn't.
Right.
And in fact, speaking of comedy, I interviewed, one of my first interviews many years ago was a comedian who was a contemporary of like Drew Carey and Ellen DeGeneres and that group, and they were all just starting to get their shows. He was about to get his show, and he pulled out. And then his friends asked him, including those people, asked him, why are you dropping out? You're about ready to get your big break. And he said, I just don't want to do this. And today he is a corporate speaker. He uses his comedy. He goes around and gives all these talks, and he'll give them like a 10-minute comedy thing to get them all laughing and in a good mood. And then he'll give his talk about, I think he's basically talking about what kind of law of attraction, positive thinking, and getting yourself into the good feeling place and having stuff come out of it that's good. So he's basically doing that kind of stuff. But he gave up what could have been a very lucrative career. Why? Because it wasn't right for him. That's the thing. When you're moving along, you don't really worry about whether you're getting to the end, I think. Because it's not about the end, it's about the journey. And when you're in that journey, you may decide to change paths, and that's perfectly okay. The main thing is stay in the journey and enjoy the journey.
Right. I think that goes to my first point about college and all that stuff too, is that a lot of times that what you envision in your mind as something that you want, you don't have good information, right? Like, like, oh, I want to be an actor, I want to be famous. And then you get famous, and you're like, "Wait, I don't want this." You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, we only see, we have like selective, I don't even know, selective seeing or selective. It's like we only see like the good parts of all these things, right? And that's something that when I dove into comedy full time, that's what hit me in the face huge was. I only see specials and people laughing and everybody having a great time.
Yeah, but you don't see the paying the dues part.
Right.
Yeah, you don't see going to a show and then showing up and there's 3 people there and you drove an hour. You don't see, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, those are the things that, again, when reality hits the fan, then you're like, it's good to reevaluate and then pivot. But that's my point about not having too hard of an end, because I think when you do have that end, then all the stuff leading up to it, you almost feel too pot committed. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I spent 3 years making this mistake to be this comedian, to your point of that guy. Oh, I wanted my show, and I spent all these years getting it. And so if you think that that's the end, or if that's then now it's like, well, I don't want to give it up because I already spent so much time making this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just
Yeah,
going to
that's
do it
not a good
anyways.
mentality to have.
But a lot of people do that, and that's
Yeah.
again, that's just trying to catch these pitfalls, and make people aware, because those are the things that will distract you from your destiny, right? It's like, oh man, I
Hmm.
should have pivoted, but I was just too focused. And then no, because eventually you're going to figure it out, and it's going to be however many years down the line, and it's
Hmm.
just going to be, like you said, a waste of time that you could have had back.
Your little analogy
Yeah.
there reminded me of something that Mark Evans, who does the Sunday evening show with Anne Marie McEwen and I, he's also a comedian like you guys, and he tells me a story. I think he told it this past Sunday about there was a concert that was given many years ago in a relatively large venue in Georgia, and it was with two musicians who up until that point they hadn't their careers hadn't really taken off, but the two musicians were Billy Joel and Jimmy Buffett, and there were nine people. There
Wow.
were 9 people in the audience. Can you imagine a double headliner with Billy Joel and Jimmy Buffett on the same program, and there's just 9 people in the audience? I'm talking about paying your dues,
Yeah.
right? And of course his joke was, now of course there are 50,000 people who claim they were one of those 9 people in the audience, but the point is
Hmm.
they still had to go through that, right? They had to go through that kind
Right.
of thing.
Yep.
Everybody does. It's just part of the journey, and that's why I'm saying you got to love the journey. If you can find a way to love that scene of being in that place where there's only 9 people in the audience, but by God, you're going to have fun with those 9 people. Now you got a chance to
Hmm.
have a career out of it. But if you're going to go into it with the
Right.
idea of, oh God, only 9 people, I'm just going to be twisting in the wind here. Well, you might as well just hang it up. You're done.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
That's
yeah, I'm
exactly
saying
right.
that was my point, is that would make a lot of people quit.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That would make a lot of people quit. And so, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's just kind of pay your dues, and it's building. Just look at it as building. You know what I mean? Like if you're building your house, you'd be excited for every room that you put up. Oh man, oh wow, look, you see the bathroom, and we did you know what I mean? You wouldn't be focused on that the house isn't finished, the whole time.
Right.
You'd be excited every time something happens. It's like that's kind of what you got to look at the process like. Is like, count and celebrate the small wins. Like I think that's huge too. And I try to do that, is like celebrate. Hey, I got an agent. Okay, we're gonna, that's good. Give yourself a pat on the back and see how far you've come. Do that with care, right? But you don't want to get too, because that's the flip side of the coin, is being too happy with yourself and you really haven't done anything yet. 'Cause that can also happen.
Depends what your
But
goal is, I guess. But hey,
yeah,
we only have
yeah,
about a minute and a half left. I want to make sure I get a couple of announcements in. First of all, if you're not yet a
sure.
subscriber to this podcast, you can see what kind of conversation we have. We have good conversation with great people with really interesting viewpoints, and it's so simple to become a subscriber. Most people know how to find podcast software if they're already podcast listeners and find shows and so forth. But if you don't know how, we've got a nice little thing set up on our homepage at loatoday.net. You just go there and there's icons to click, and it just walks you through the process. And when you do, of course, all the episodes, all 11 plus being made every week, come streaming right to your smartphone. And for all of our subscribers, please do continue to put out on social media that you're listening and watching LOA Today. Maybe you're watching in the Facebook Law of Attraction Changed My Life group today, where we've been live streaming to all of our episodes now for the last week, 10 days, and we're going to continue to do so. Or if you're just one of our regular subscribers, which is great too, please just put it out in social media, because through the law of attraction and through the laws of how social media work, more and more people will find out about your daily dose of happy. And I'll tell you, you talk about dreams, Carlos, you talk about dreams. My dream is 10,000 listeners for every episode. And I just think about that. I play that out in my head and I imagine it, even though I'm not earning the living off of it right now. But I keep thinking about that, not so much because I'll make a living doing that, because I will get to that point. I'll be making a good living. But I just think about what happens to society as a whole. What happens when you just
Yeah.
throw out 10,000 people out there every single day having a great day because they got their day off to a good start by listening to the program? It just
Right.
boggles my mind to think all the different ways that plays out. The ripple effect is just fabulous. So
Yeah.
that's an example of how I get jazzed doing something that I'm not getting paid to do. You guys are getting paid to do this, but I just get jazzed by it. I think it's just so cool to keep trying to do this and maybe turn it into a career someday. And when that day comes, I'm going to be like, yeah, this is fabulous. I can hardly wait. So,
So on that note, I'll go ahead.
no, finish up. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, like I said last time, if you really feel like you're getting something out of it, make sure you tell your best friend, right?
Yes.
Everybody got that one person that you share everything with. If you really like it, tell your best friend to subscribe or listen. And then also, to your point, Walt, that grumpy guy at work, maybe you should listen to this LOA Today podcast. Because if you listen to it, then I'm going to have a better day at work every day. So
Interesting approach.
That one do with caution, but yeah, maybe that's a fix for you.
Very cool. I like that. All right. Well, guys, this has been good, and I'm glad we did this. I'm not sure what we're going to be doing next week, but we'll figure that out. And as soon as I'm going to let you guys figure out what the topic is for next week. So you let me know, and then I'll advertise it. Okay.
Okay.
Sure.
Does that sound good? Okay. All right. So we'll leave it at that, and we'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
The broadcast of Facebook Live has stopped. Recording has stopped.